Hi, good morning. I'm Katie Stockton Roberts. I'm from the BBC, and I'm here to talk to you about migrating from legacy platforms to Node. It's mostly a case study of what my team's gone through and what we've learned. So, a little about me. I'm development lead for knowledge and learning at the BBC. So if you're not familiar with the BBC is the British Broadcasting Corporation. They produce a lot of television programs which are fairly known worldwide, like Doctor Who. There's several natural history programs with David Attenborough, BBC World Service, but they also have an extensive online offering as well. I've been a developer for over 10 years. I'm not going to put down the proper number because then you'll work out my age. I became a developer by accident. I only started learning to code because the guy who I was sharing an office with was a Lingo developer, and he didn't really talk about anything other than Phil Collins and Lingo, so I learnt Lingo. I love JavaScript, I really do. I think it's a great language. I've worked in it, using it in lots of different sectors. I've done games, education, advertising and entertainment, and I've worked on a lot of different products within the BBC. So I've worked on IPTVs, which is the smart TVs, next generation televisions. I've worked on the BBC Sport and music events products, and now I work on the website for knowledge and learning. So where I work, whenever you see a BBC presentation, they will always show you this. This is a beautiful picture of Salford in the sunshine. This is Media City, where the BBC moved to in the north. It's a great place. BBC Sports filmed up here. Six Music is recorded in one of the buildings that I used to work in, and they film The Voice and Countdown and Jeremy Kyle in the building next door. But it usually looks like this, because it's in the north of England. What my team works on. We work on knowledge. I work on knowledge and learning, like I mentioned, and we offer the formal and informal learning content for the BBC. So, as part of the BBC's charter, they have a remit to educate, entertain, and inform. Knowledge and learning cover the educate and inform part of that remit. So we do that through a few products, such as I Wonder, which is kind of edutainment, so learning by curiosity, and we do that through a couple of ways. We've got the timelines offerings, which are you can explore the timeline of an event. So in this case, this is Gandhi's life, but you can see the dots on there represent significant points in his life, and you can skip to those. But we also have stories about the birth of the universe, so it's a very long timeline. And we also have a short timeline, which is how to cook the perfect Christmas dinner. We also work on the genres sites. So these are the home pages for science, religion, art, history, and earth. They're all content CMS-driven sites, so they're very data-driven. And we have a sister team up in Glasgow who work on the bite-size offering. And you can see from that they're all responsive websites, and they're predominantly built in PHP. And we also have the BBC Food site. The BBC Food site is one of the BBC's, they call them flagship products, so they're something that the BBC is very passionate about. It's got a lot of recipe content on there, it's got a lot of menus, a lot about special diets and techniques for how to cook food, as well as program tie-ins for things like Great British Bake Off and Saturday Kitchen. So some facts about the food site. We get around 2 million unique users per week. That peaks most evenings at around 30 requests per second, and rising at a weekend to about 40 requests per second as people try to figure out what they're going to have for tea and what they're cooking for a Sunday roast. And on Pancake Day, we see that go up to 90 requests a second. So it's a pretty robust site. It's one of the BBC Online's oldest products. It's been going for 15 years. BBC Online's been around for 18 years. And just to put it in perspective, iPlayer's been around for 8 years. The food database has over 11,000 recipes. And this is my audience participation bit. How many of these recipes are chocolate cake recipes? No. 245, though. There are 245 chocolate cake recipes up there. The food site sends over 100,000 SMS messages per year. So you've got this functionality where you can text a mobile with a recipe that you particularly like. And that works out at about 400 recipe ideas a day are being texted to mobile phones. And the current live site is built in PHP. So why do we want to change at all? Well, the current code was developed over 6 years ago. So it's It's very, like I said, it's a strong and robust code base, but it's built on Zend. It's old, and it's had some Elastoplast fixes over the years. So it's not watertight anymore, and it's not a great place to start. It's not responsive at all. It's got a mobile CSS which works on device detection, but it was built in a time before tablets and phablets, and so it's not a great user experience. The BBC is moving to continuous delivery using Amazon Web Services, so we can deliver our value early, like Richard was saying earlier in the week. We want to be able to add new features to the site, because the new features is a better user experience, but we've got a bit of a problem that our audience is quite resistant to change, especially on the food product, where we've got sort of 40 to 60-year-old is our target demographic, so we've got to do it quite gently when we're adding new features to the site. And we're moving towards a more personalised world where there's more personalised systems that are going to be going in. And we're decommissioning old services. We could patch up the existing code and move on, but, you know. So, incidentally, I saw this on the back of your pages the other day. It's programmatic. I can't say it. The Profound Programmer. It's a really great website. They've got some fantastic backdrops. So why Node? The wider BBC are moving to Node. So BBC Homepage and BBC Sport are already using Node in their product. And when the Homepage team moved to Node, they undertook a load of load testing with Node versus other candidates such as Clojure and Scala. And Node really did perform best against all of those. Speed up development. I think everyone sort of knows that Node is faster to write, faster feedback loops. It's just a really great thing to be doing. And it plays nicely on the cloud. Non-blocking data calls. We make a lot of data calls on the recipe page. We have, I think it's 20 different calls for just to create one recipe, and it goes up on some of the programs pages. We have up to 80 calls just to composite that data. So we want to keep that. The non-blocking data calls means that we can improve our page load times. It keeps our Node has an active community which keeps my developers interested. They're wanting to learn new stuff, and they're learning things every day from the community that's out there. And Node is great for microservices. So we have actually had to write a microservice because of some decommissioning of old content. The problem is we had something called the key value store in the BBC. It was being decommissioned. It's a couch database. It's been around for many, many years. It was written by a group of people who no longer work at the BBC. And we've now got the problem that nobody knows what it does. So there are not many services using this key value store. So food was one of the major users of it because we use it for creating content for our food homepages, the recipe index pages, the seasons, incidentally, all the pictures at the top here are taken from the seasons of the food website, and they change. So in autumn, you'll get different ones. You'll get things like that. So it was important that we had a replacement for it, but it was being switched off. So the requirements were that whatever we replaced it with must work with the existing products, because we're not going to spend a lot of time trying to fix up our old products now. We're moving to Node anyway. And they mustn't require any major rework on the existing products because we don't have time to work on those. So our solution was to use DynamoDB, because DynamoDB is a non-SQL AWS managed service, but the legacy products were unable to communicate directly with it. So we built something called Heston. And Heston is a translation service which provides a REST API for the Amazon SDK. It allows the legacy products to communicate directly with it. And it works. There's my little diagram of it. So we've got a user coming into the PHP app and a super user coming into the admin app. And Heston just sits between those and the DynamoDB to add the content to it. So it's doing one thing and it's doing it well. So it's a good microservice. It has 5 service endpoints. It has less than 350 lines of code, which it's still quite a lot, but there's some complexity around generating previews for the admin app. So that's where that comes in. And Heston serves up content nicely. Comparatively, it was very, very quick to write as well. I think actually solid coding on this took about a month, which compared to like a Java service that I've worked on that was similar, significantly quicker. I was going to draw a pie chart, but yeah, I didn't have time to work out the numbers, sorry. How we're migrating the food app itself. So this is the PHP app. We're using a run alongside approach. So we're not going to try and do a big bang release. We're going to release parts of it at a time so that we can test the water with the users and we can release regularly to live. We've refreshed the current mobile CSS so that the jump between the old and the new will be less. So it's gently moving it up. And we're creating the current look and feel of the site whilst adding the new capabilities, which is, sometimes it's a little disheartening because you're basically rebuilding the same site in a different language, but it's what we call the no more tears approach, and it's something that was adopted by the CBeebies team when they were working, because when you've got very young users or users who aren't as familiar with using the internet, they don't like seeing things change under their feet. They want their familiar content there and they want it to be in the same place. So we're using that sort of approach, and that way, once we've got the new site up there, that's when we can start pulling the levers, making the changes, and getting the new content up there. And yeah, we're delivering it route by route rather than a big bang. So another one of my omnigraphal diagrams. This is just showing that, yeah, we're using traffic management to redirect traffic. The recipes will be the first page that we will go live with, because it's one that gives the most value to the customers. That's the one that gets the most hits for food, so we'll get the most feedback to it, but that's the route we're going to do for that. I spoke about that. Approach notes, we've only got a small number of moving parts. We're not trying to push up the food service, which is the which contains all the database with the recipes. We're not trying to migrate that to the cloud at the same time. We're not trying to migrate the food admin app at the same time. We're just doing the one thing. We're just moving the food PHP app. We've chosen to develop in a very component-driven way. So we're creating small components, which we're then using to composite into template pages. We're doing regular releases to live, even though they're not public-facing. So that, I'll show you in a minute the site as it is now on the live pages, and you can actually go up and follow the progress of it as we go. And it means that we can get, and doing that means we can get feedback from our stakeholders early as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and, oh, did that work? Right. So here we go. This is the current food site. It's a recipe for a chocolate cake, because we have 245 of those. And this is the content as is. So we've, like I say, we're writing it in Node. This is the live one. This doesn't look very much like that page yet, but we're starting to pull in the same content. But this is what my team have worked on this week, and I've been really excited about this because it's starting to actually look like a proper page, which is great. It's fully responsive, so if I take this down and start changing the size, you'll see that the page reflows depending on the device size that you're working on. So what you'd expect from a responsive site, and the menus change accordingly. So that's working pretty nicely. And we also, just to show that we do it on not just cake, there you go, as a chili recipe, with the ingredients for chili as well. And what we're doing is we're creating a style guide at the same time, which is a place where we're, this is a reference for both the developers and the designers, so they can see what color palettes they're using. If we start getting crazy many color palettes, we can actually, we can feed that back to the designers. We can, the developers know what they mean by the grid and where things are on the grid, and we've got this library of components that have been created. And what's also nice is we've been working towards, we've got an overlay there, so everything works within that grid. So if I shrink that down and scroll down, you'll see that everything sort of flows around that grid. So, what improvements have we seen? So far we've seen improvements in load time. So because even though we've not got a huge amount of data up there, we're already having to make 9 of our data calls for compositing that page. So, and I would show you how fast it would load up, but the network here is still not quite right. So you'll have to take my word for that. This Lego brick development is great. We're starting to get a bunch of components that we can then say to the designers, here you go, what do you want to do with those? Our development time is reduced. Because we're using the same stack for both the front end and the back end, with less context switching for the developers, they are able to understand more of the product, and that's a really useful thing for me to, as well as the lead, to be able to do that, to know that. And there are other things that are going to come up as we're going forward. So yeah, I think that we're just seeing mostly good things. There are a couple of bad points. It has been a huge learning curve for the non-JavaScript developers. So the team were predominantly PHP, but they'd done JavaScript before, but there was a Java developer on the team, and he has struggled a bit. But I've got to say, he's broken the back of it, and he's managing really well now. And occasionally, I think it's the same with quite a lot of JavaScript stuff, that occasionally there's been too much freedom and not enough, this is the right way to do it, because Node's still fairly immature. There are many, many different approaches to things. And we've had to backtrack a couple of times when we've gone down the wrong path. But we've recovered quickly, and that's one of the great things about it as well. So I have spoken a lot faster than I did in rehearsals, so I'm actually finished there. This is my email address if you want to contact me, and my Twitter handle. If anybody has any questions, I will try and answer them for you. Hi.
I was wondering, why did you decide to go with the Amazon services? I presume that you guys have your own data centers, and if that's only for big waste, like, why didn't you choose something like you can deploy locally?
We are moving across to Amazon generally in the BBC, so we've got a lot of our products are starting to migrate up there. So we've already got the timelines and the genres projects on Amazon, and the sport products are on Amazon, and the homepages on Amazon. It's just something that the BBC is moving to rather than their own data centers, managed services, rather than trying to keep our own stuff in-house.
Sorry, and you consider that cost effective?
Yeah, because you can bill per team rather than like a blanket cost that is being. I can't answer a great deal of. Sorry, but yes, it does work out to be quite cost effective, so long as people keep an eye on what their costs are and don't go mad. Hi.
Do you feel like your teams were willing to experiment with new things because of the increased development speed?
Yes. Yeah, we have had chances to play around with different things and to try new approaches. Yeah. Hi. 2 minutes, okay. Hi.
In terms of the languages that you looked at, like Scala, you mentioned as an alternative, and then obviously, do you guys do any kind of like structured experiment where you tried to build the same thing, or was it more just like, I guess, how did you make that determination between languages, or is that still going on?
Well, the children's team have gone Scala Play route, and I talked quite extensively with the development lead there, but one of the reasons I didn't want to go down that route was, firstly, homepage and sport, like I say, we're already using Node, but it's easier to find good JavaScript developers than it is to find people who understand Scala and Play, and I'd actually tried Scala a bit, and I didn't think that the entry point to it was particularly easy. So it just seemed a better fit for our team and for the timescales we were working in. Okay. All right, well, thanks very much.